Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Cause Leadership Podcast. I am pleased to have as my guest today Brad Bell, the President and CEO of Mission Aviation Fellowship, the Canadian version of that. And we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But Brad, welcome. Great to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, David. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, likewise. Brad and I have known each other for a number of years now, and I've had various points of contact with MAF over the years, both through family as well as my own personal involvement. But just looking forward to our conversation, Brad. And maybe just as we jump into it, some people may not know who Mission Aviation Fellowship is. So if you want to give us a bit of an overview, that would be helpful.
I need to perfect my elevator talk on who we are. So MAF stands for Mission Aviation Fellowship. We are a Christian missions organization. We are a Christian NGO, and we use small aircraft to provide help, hope, and healing to some of the most remote people in the world. And so help, hope, and healing looks different in different countries. It could be food or medical relief. It could be medevacs. It could be helping bring a team of people out that will create a well to provide fresh water. It could be helping pastors from the local church to get out to see a congregation that's very, very remote. So it could be all those things, and it's different in every country. And we do all of that using aircraft.
Yeah, which is amazing. And maybe at some point we'll be able to provide a video of a landing of an aircraft on one of those crazy jungle fields that the pilots land on.
I've been with some of my pilots and we've landed on that, and they make it look so easy. And some of the runways are so challenging.
Just further with regard to MAF, Canadians have provided a significant contribution to the work of MAF worldwide. Somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 43 or 44 families at the moment that are out in the field flying for Canada, but also flying for some of the other projects. Do you want to just give us a bit of a sense around that as far as the Canadians involved?
Sure. I want to try and avoid a discussion about how MAF is structured globally, because it's a bit unusual, but most of the pilots that MAF Canada graduates and sends out to the mission field do not work for us. MAF Canada runs a program in Angola. In total, MAF operates in about 30 countries. And so most of our pilots are on loan to either MAF US or MAF Europe, and they work in countries that those different MAFs control. So, at lots of places in Africa, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, all over the world. And so most of my staff don't work for me. They, as I said, they're on loan, but we globally, meaning MAF, we operate pretty much as a single unit when we're operating overseas. And so some MAFs will contribute money, some will contribute aircraft, some, like Canada, will contribute staff.
I believe aircraft as well, and particularly in the country of Angola, and work there with the hospital. Do you want to give us a bit of insight on that?
So, as you mentioned, Angola is a program that MAF Canada runs. So we provide planes and staff and money, as do other MAFs. Other MAFs come alongside and help us. There's one hospital there in particular, CEML Hospital, run by a doctor named Stephen Foster. And we've partnered with them over the years, and we do a tremendous amount of medical work with them. So we'll do something called a medical safari. We will take a team of doctors and nurses out in one of our larger aircraft, and we'll go out for as long as a week, and we will fly to remote villages, and they'll set up clinics, and they'll actually be able to do operations in the field. It's astounding what they can do. So they'll do eye surgery or other types of surgery, and we'll be in a village for a day or two, and then pack that up and move everybody, including all the surgical equipment, to another village and do the same thing. And we just love doing that. I mean, talk about bringing help, hope, and healing. It's all three. And there's lots of videos of people whose sight was restored after a surgery that you and I would consider more normal here in Canada, and yet is often unattainable where some of these people live. And so it's just a tremendous blessing to be able to provide that service and partner with CML.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Now, you touched on it there. You said bigger aircraft. I just want to give folks a sense. How many aircraft are in the partnership? I mean, it's quite a few.
I think the number changes on a monthly basis, but it's about 130. One of the things that we're known for total in the partnership is that we have the world's largest fleet of small aircraft.
Hmm.
So I did mention bigger aircraft. I guess I should qualify that. The largest aircraft that we fly is a 12-seater. It would be a Grand Caravan or a Kodiak. And so for us, that's a large aircraft. I know for some of your people in the audience, when they fly to Europe or something, they're on a wide body jet, and that would be large to them. And our smaller aircraft would be 4 to 6-seater. So that's kind of the range that we operate on. And our largest aircraft would have a flying range of about 5 or 6 hours.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Just speaking of aircraft and pilots, the other thing that MAF, particularly in Canada, is doing, they have a flight school that they're part of and working to train pilots. I was going to say younger pilots, but I guess they're not always younger, primarily younger pilots, to prepare them for flying overseas. Can you give us a bit of a sense of that work and how that goes?
Sure. So can I be un-Canadian for a moment?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Be a little boastful or whatever. It turns out that Canadians in general are a pretty hardy bunch of people. Look at the weather we have to contend with, so we're used to a little hardship with respect to weather. We tend to be peacemakers on the global stage. We are, kind of a well-rounded group of people. And then when you add to that our pilots who are used to flying over prairies, over mountains, over water, through bad weather, we have some amazing pilots. In fact, some of the world's best bush pilots come out of Canada. So a lot of the MAFs that we work with really want our people because of all those characteristics that I just mentioned. And we learned a decade or more ago that most of our pilots, 63%, I think is the current number, come from a flight school that was started by Prairie Bible College out in Three Hills, Alberta. This is an amazing flight school, and it's out in Alberta, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they just keep training up pilots that have just been amazing in the mission aviation world. About 8 years ago, we had a chance to partner with Prairie, and so now we manage and run the flight school. And in fact, we're entering into an agreement with Prairie to become 50-50 owners of the flight school. Just so that each of Prairie and MAF can do what we do best and pour into that school. So our goal is to have 100 missionary families in 10 years, well, 9 years now. And so Prairie is a huge part of that. And you and I have been talking about this. We've been mentioning pilots, but there's lots of other people that it takes to run an aviation program, and some of those are engineers. And so our flight school is also an engineering training school, so we can graduate engineers from there. And then, of course, and we probably won't talk a lot about that in this podcast, but we need teachers, we need IT people, we need managers, we need administrators. You need the whole gamut. And just briefly on IT, because that is my background. Think about sending a young family to the field. Maybe the dad is a pilot or he's an engineer, and if they didn't have internet, they would not be going to the field. The internet is what allows the families to stay connected with the grandparents back home and that kind of thing. So it really takes a lot of different type of people to make it work. But of course, because we're in aviation, it's pilots that we tend to talk, a lot. Yeah.
And I think what people may not understand is there's a lot of complexity that goes in. I mean, as you say, you're kind of running an airline in one sense, not in the commercial sense like WestJet or Air Canada or something like that, but a lot of training, a lot of regulations, a lot of, you still have to abide by all the Canadian regulations as it relates to aviation. Those are all pretty significant elements of your leadership and your team's leadership.
Correct. We hold ourselves to a high standard, so we require all of our operations to be at the FAA or Transport Canada level. In fact, Angola is inspected by a Transport Canada inspector. They're regularly audited to make sure that we comply. And where we fly is dangerous in some cases, and so we really need those high safety standards in order to be able to keep our performance and safety record up. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to segue off what you mentioned just a couple minutes ago, that you come from the IT world. And so let's backtrack a little bit historically. About 10 years ago now, I guess, you had your own software business that served organizations, I think, globally, as far as away as Australia, for sure. You left that after a number of years that you had built that business along with some other business partners. And then you exited, and over the course of a few months, decided to become the CEO at MAF in Canada. But maybe give us a walkthrough on what was that transition like for you as a leader, leaving business and IT behind, and in a sense, going somewhere completely different with a very different mandate, and yet it's still built on many of the skills that you had built up over many years.
Yeah, maybe I could back up just a tiny bit further. So I started my technology company. I went to University of Waterloo for math computer science, and you may or may not know that Waterloo, U of W, has graduated a lot of people that have started a lot of companies.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of tech companies. And so I was just one of those people. And in my final year of university, I started a technology company. And as you said, we ended up being global. We did business in 4 countries. And while I was a young entrepreneur, say maybe 10 years in, I would have some of my clients who were progressively becoming larger, like bigger budgets, ask me, well, Brad, what are you going to do when you sell your company? And at first I was kind of offended, because back in the day, so I'm kind of old, you didn't start a technology company to be bought by Google. You started a technology company to endure, to last.
Yeah, sure.
And but nonetheless, my answer generally was, I would love to work with a Christian organization. I would really like to do that. And so I sold my company after 26 years and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And shame on me, I kind of forgot what I'd said, but I'd consistently said that. And so I was looking to see if I might start another technology company. I didn't know. And then got a call from MAF that they had heard that I had sold my company, and they were interested in talking with me about the potential of becoming the CEO. After a fairly long interview process, the board of directors invited me to join as CEO, and that was amazing. And to be honest, I was a little, not scared, but I was a little worried. I didn't know if I was employable. I had never worked for anyone but myself, and I think this might be more true of guys than it is of ladies. But I knew a lot of people, guys, whose identity was partly formed around what they did or their job or their career, and I didn't know if that was true for me or not. So I was a little cautious. I wasn't sure what that would look like, but such an amazing experience. And I mean, for people listening, if you're in the private sector right now and you're considering a second career with a nonprofit, wow, it is fantastic. One of my mentors talked to me about, the fact that I had some success with my private company, and now it was time to have significance.
Yeah.
Those words have stuck with me, and I've thought about them quite a bit. And so, if you're out there listening and you're thinking, my private, my for-profit career is coming to an end, what would that look like? I would highly encourage you to consider that. You and I have spoken over the years about what that transition was like, and it's 10, almost 11 years ago. But there are a few things I remembered. I remembered joining and finding that the organization, and this is true for many charities, I think, I'm not picking on MAF here in particular, they weren't particularly innovative. They were an older organization, which is a great thing, but they weren't very innovative, and so we had to work on developing a culture where they were thinking about innovation, where they were thinking that failing was okay because you learn through failure as well as success. And so if you're going to really be innovative, you have to allow for failure. Not everything you're going to try is going to work. Um, I also found that charities weren't really good at making sure they had the right person in the right seat. You know, that book, Good to Great, which is now old, but still relevant. They really talked about getting the right person on the right seat on the bus. And charities are not very good at that. And so coming from the private sector, you need to work on that. And then the other thing I found that was really curious, and maybe this is related more to Christian charities as opposed to a secular nonprofit, but there was a bit of mistrust of the for-profit sector.
Hmm.
I,
Okay.
I think they thought that what worked in the for-profit would not translate well, and really what I've tried to do is just merge the best of both worlds. Take the best practices we could find from the for-profit world, because they know a lot of great stuff about leadership and innovation and all that, and really merge that with the best of the nonprofit world, which knows about mission and vision and passion. One of the things that has so impressed me about MAF is that I work with some of the very best, very smartest people in the world. You shouldn't equate nonprofit with non-skilled, and it's what a privilege. And I mentioned the passion and the mission and the vision in a nonprofit. We just had a missionary couple in our office last week, and they've been with MAF for 45 years. Just the wisdom, just being in the same room with this couple and hearing their experience and learning from their wisdom. And these people didn't have to stay at MAF for 45 years.
Right.
They chose to stay, and they chose to continue to stay because they're making a difference. And that's exciting. So, it's that kind of, that gets you up in the morning. Like when you wake up, that gets you motivated and it gets you going. So it's been awesome. It's been really good, but it's different and lots of learning.
Yeah, and I mean, you've given us a few great points there, just as far as what that transition looked like for you. Are there one or two sort of overlying leadership principles that you've been able to take away from the last 11 years as CEO at MEF?
Yeah, and they might be kind of contradictory. I haven't really thought about that before. I would say the first thing is, if you're coming from the for-profit sector to nonprofit, spend a lot of time learning. Spend a lot of time just absorbing and learning. And for me, that included visiting programs in Africa and Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, and just getting out there and experiencing that. The second thing I would say, though, that kind of contradicts that is, don't forget all of your learnings from the for-profit, and don't be ashamed of those in any way. Like, bring those in, bring the idea of culture change in, and adding the idea of being agile and innovative, and bring some of those leadership skills that work. At the end of the day, people are people. If you're leading, a person isn't different because they work for a for-profit or a nonprofit. We're all people. And so, bring those skills forward, and do your best to merge them. I guess in my first year, I kind of adopted the do no harm philosophy, and I just wanted to learn and understand. And then when I felt like I'd learned a little bit, then I started to think about what culture change would look like. But it's tremendously humbling. I mean, my VP of Ops has been with MAF for over 35 years. And I've only been here 10 years. So I'm sure I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, sure. So just practically speaking, I mean, you came into the charitable sector, and then all of a sudden you're reporting to a board of directors. You're having to recruit pilots. I'm sure you recruited immense numbers of IT people over the years, but pilots is a whole different breed in some respects. And you had to get into fundraising, which, fundraising in the charitable sense is different than fundraising in the technology or software sense. Let's just back up to board governance. What were some of the areas that you found unique about reporting to a board of governors in a charitable context? And how did you transition into reporting to a board of directors?
So one of my regrets from my for-profit experience was that I did not set up an advisory board.
Hmm. Okay.
Because you're a young entrepreneur, you think you know everything, and it would have just been great if I'd set up an advisory board, and they weren't, that wouldn't have been a governance board. They wouldn't have had ownership, but they would have been able to come alongside of us and say, "That's crazy. You should not do that," or "What are you doing? You should focus in this area." And so, um, having known that that was a regret coming out of my for-profit experience, I think that helped me report to a board, a governance board. Um, but one of the things that I rely on my board to do is to tell me things I don't know, or to tell me things that I might be blind to. What are my blind spots? And because I interact with them, the entire board, 4 times a year, they are not subject to the boiling frog syndrome. Uh, so they can look at something and go, "What? That's crazy! Like, what do you do?" Or, "Wow, like that's incredible. You need to double down on that." And so, I've really appreciated that. And I've had great board chairs. I have had 3 board chairs now in my tenure. They've all been amazing and different. And I mean, the one advice I would give to people coming from the for-profit sector is really invest in that relationship with your board chair, get to know them, and build that high trust factor, and then you can solve any problem. And they're there to give you advice. They're there to support you. I've had them ask me some really insightful questions at different moments, and so I rely on that. It's been a great experience, far better than I thought it would be. And if you'll recall earlier, I said I wasn't sure if I was employable.
Right.
And now I'd be reporting to a board. I'd be employed by a board, and it's been a tremendous experience. It's been good.
That's great. Awesome. Um, Recruitment and talent in the charitable sector, as you mentioned earlier, people are people, and that's true for whatever industry they're working in. But charity tends to attract people who not only mean well but want to do well, and our sector is sometimes challenged from a talent perspective. Just wondered what your experience has been like that, and what any perspectives you can give us on that.
When I think about recruiting, I think about recruiting in 2 different silos. One would be the staff that we recruit to work in our home office, fundraisers, accounting, HR people, the typical thing that you'd have in any business. And then the other type of recruiting we do is for our mission staff, our overseas staff, pilots, engineers, IT people, and so those are very different. On the home office front, the more normal front, I would say that one of the things that we've done is we've not made do. In other words, when we're hiring someone, yes, we want them to have a passion for what we do. We want them to have an interest, but we need them to be the most skilled in the area of expertise that we're hiring for, that we can afford, or that we can find. And so I really feel strongly that MAF Canada has done well, because we have worked hard to find the very best people we can. And often we're hiring people that are above our weight class. If I think about my executive leadership team, they are all better than me. Each of them in their own way knows way more than me. And that's been on purpose. We've tried to hire the very best. And I think some charities just make do.
Yeah.
Someone comes along and they're passionate about that particular charity, and so that is the qualification for hiring them. On the mission staff side, we have always hired excellence because of what we do. We must hire the best pilots. We must hire the best engineers, the most rugged engineers. They're working in conditions that it can be pretty crazy, and so we've always hired excellence there. But that's made our job challenging, because you and I were talking about this the other day. If my recruiting pitch is to a pilot, look, leave that cushy Air Canada job and come work for us, and move your entire family to a country where the internet is not so great and the electricity is on, 12 hours a day, and you're going to be landing on airstrips, not runways, airstrips that are grass and hopefully not too muddy. Clearly, you need someone that is already motivated to help bring help, hope, and healing, because a lot of the working conditions are not going to be the drawing factor.
No, exactly. That's right.
So really, I guess I would say what I've done since I've joined is try and raise the home office hiring standards to be equivalent to what our missions setting standards already were. But it's hard. I mean, on the home office side, a lot of employers have struggled to find uh, good people, great people. You hear we've experienced that. You shortlist a candidate, you provide a job offer, and you get ghosted. What on earth is that about? And so in that sense, we're struggling just as any other employer would.
Yeah, for sure. And related to that is fundraising, and we both know that fundraising talent can be challenging to find. But maybe just moving into fundraising generally, then the realities of the economy that we're in at the moment. I'll say digital transformation in the more of in the current sense around the tools and initiatives that are digital based, whether it's websites or AI or any of that. Cybersecurity, I know, is a really important element for you, especially as a technologist, but certainly as the CEO of a technology-related business. And then just the complexity and the I guess the risk associated with having international employees working in challenging countries. So, anyways, that was a long list of things,
Yeah,
but
that's a huge.
but sort of fundraising within all of those realities. Let's just maybe start there.
So maybe I'll talk about a pet peeve first, and that is that I see charities that are hiring chief executive officers, and they want them to have fundraising background, or they want them to be the chief fundraiser. And right away I think, really, is that really what you want? Because you're hiring a chief executive officer, and basically you're saying they need to be good at everything.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not. I've yet to meet any chief executive that's good at everything. And so, maybe you need a chief fundraiser, but maybe not. Maybe you just need a good leader. And so, so that's kind of a pet peeve I have.
No, I agree. 100%.
That said, I have been in sales my whole life. When I was in high school, I worked at Radio Shack. I love selling. I love selling stereos and computers. And when I owned my own business, of course, I was always selling, right? Fundraising is different than selling. You're right. You mentioned that earlier, but it is all about people. And so for me, the big learning for me has been that philanthropy is not the same as asking people for money. So, if you're at a mall and the Salvation Army has the kettle and, you put $5 in, that's charity. That's awesome. And Salvation Army does an amazing work. But philanthropy is really about connecting people of means or of some means that desire to give some of their money to meet a cause that they're passionate about, and to fulfill that desire to make a difference there. And so for us, it's connecting with people who are passionate about a particular country or a people group or about aircraft or whatever. And so for me, that's been the big learning, that philanthropy is not sales.
Right.
So all that said, the thing I knew I needed to do when I joined, understanding that I had a sales background, was I wanted to go out and find the very best fundraiser or director of fundraising philanthropy that I could find. And so we did that. And it took us a while. And you mentioned it's hard to find those people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm proud of the hire that we made and the team that my VP of philanthropy is building.
Let's just touch on the area of cybersecurity for a second, partly because I'm sure you've got a technology perspective on it, but at the same time, certainly our colleague Duke Chang at Canada Helps has brought up this topic too, as far as the effect on many charities across the country. Many who don't have either the technical skills that somebody like yourself might bring to the organization, or the actual technology itself that they need in order to deal with cybersecurity issues. Can you just give us a comment on that? I think you would you would have a unique perspective on it.
Sure. So I frequently tell my board, and this may not be the comment you want to hear. I frequently tell my board that it's when we experience a cyber attack, not if. And I do that because I want to prepare people. I want to get people in that mindset, and I also want the board to understand that we are preparing contingencies to prevent an attack, but we're also preparing contingencies for what happens when we get attacked. And so I think people need to have that mindset, that realization. But I would say to small charities, there are lots of tools out there that many companies make available to charities for free or for almost no cost. And you should try and find a partner. We use a company in KW called Copper Tree. They're an amazing software company, software company, and find a company that can come alongside you. There's a lot of really basic stuff that you can do, like multi-factor authentication, and making sure that you have backups that extend beyond just a few weeks. And there's some really, really simple things that you can do that can provide you quite a bit of protection.
Yeah.
I,
No.
I don't know how to get that word out there better. I've talked with the 4Cs about doing maybe a podcast or a series of podcasts that would allow us to come alongside smaller charities and help, and maybe that'll come to fruition one day. But it's an incredibly important area, and you hear of organizations all the time, weekly almost, that are being taken down by a cyber attack. City of Hamilton, they were attacked 2 years ago, and they're still recovering.
Yeah. It's crazy. Thanks, Brad, for that. You mentioned innovation, and I'm going to move away from technology for a second here. And you've introduced kind of a unique operating system into the business of MAF, the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I know it's kind of early days and it's getting established, but you've come through quite a process of bringing it on board. Just curious, from your perspective, how has that process gone? What have been what was the interest originally in doing it, and what are you seeing as far as the results so far?
Yeah. So my board highly encouraged me, aka told me, that they really wanted me to get involved in some personal development. Whatever they put no constraints on that. And so I said to them, "Okay, great, thank you. I'm gonna get involved in a for-profit something, maybe with entrepreneurs, because I told them I wanted to keep that thinking sharp." And so I joined an organization, an international organization based out of Toronto called Strategic Coach. Wow, incredible organization! Boy, the learning that I experienced. I mean, my only regret is that I didn't join Strategic Coach when I was a young entrepreneur. That would have been amazing. And so at Strategic Coach, I was rubbing shoulders with other entrepreneurs, and many of them, most of them, had implemented something called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it is a management system, a management philosophy for running companies. And it's primarily designed for for-profit companies, but it translates very well to nonprofit. And there's no rocket science in EOS. They start right at the very beginning. They say that, look, like, we haven't invented magic pixie dust. There's nothing special here. They've just taken a collection of tools that have been used in industry for a long, long time and put them together. And so really EOS is about using those tools and the discipline of using those tools. And so what EOS has helped us develop is a clear 10-year vision, a 3-year vision, a 1-year vision. And then every day and it's very agile. So every quarter we develop new goals for the quarter, and those quarterly goals, of course, feed into the 1-year plan, the 3-year plan, the 10-year plan, and the rigor, the discipline around the meeting schedule, around the reporting, around the accountability of those goals. So the executive leadership team and I establish quarterly goals, and we've now fully implemented EOS. So the director level under us also does the same meeting process that's called L10, and the manager levels below them also do these weekly and biweekly L10 meetings. And so we set our quarterly goals, and we are accountable to the staff. At the beginning of each quarter, we say, here's the goals that we've established. And at the end of the quarter, we have a town hall and we say, here's how we did. You know, here's how the CEO did. He achieved 2 out of his 3 goals, or 3 or 1, or, hopefully
Right.
it's not 0. And
Yeah.
so it's just been amazing. And it will take a well-performing company and move it into an extremely high-performing company. And then what happens is you push EOS through the organization is that everybody is aligned with the same vision and the same set of goals. Everybody is accountable to their quarterly goals for moving the company forward to, the 1, the 3, and the 10 years. It's exciting. Here I thought I had sort of learned all I was going to learn from the for-profit sector, and
Yeah.
strategic coach and EOS, come out of nowhere. So I'm feeling privileged that I was able to go to strategic coach and that we were able to learn about this. So I would, anybody listening, for-profit or charity, I would encourage you to look at EOS.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can see the binder.
Oh, there it is. Okay. That's right.
That's kind of the EOS Bible. So
Yeah. All right. Well, and that sort of started with some professional development, obviously, that you pursued with strategic coach, and that was certainly one of the outcomes. Just wondering if you could just comment just the idea of professional development for CEO and the team in general. What's your perspective on that for running an organization like MAF?
Well, I'm sad to say that in my for-profit days, it was a fast-moving tech company, and we didn't seem to slow down a lot for personal development. I mean, we did some, and it's
Sure.
not to say we didn't do a lot of that, but it was pretty fast-paced. Coming to the nonprofit sector, I guess I've had a chance to be a bit more reflective. But we do have a learning management system within the organization, so we value that. We will pay for education that staff want to embark on if they're looking to upskill some areas of their work. We have a couple of leaders right now going through master's programs, which is just amazing for them and for us. And so we're coming alongside them financially and also providing work resources to make that happen. So we feel that's pretty important. It's funny though, and again, I'll separate the organization. We've got the office staff, which is more like a normal company, and so we're having to learn or relearn how important it is to do personal development. But on the mission side staff, our pilots and engineers, they're constantly upskilling. They're constantly learning new things and retraining. Transport Canada requires that they recertify every year or 2 or 3 years. So it's funny that they always knew this and we're always doing it. And we're kind of just learning that now on the home office side.
It's great to hear that you guys are investing in it. That's awesome. Just getting close to the end of our conversation, Brad, but succession planning, obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious to everyone, but I would say that we're in the largest leadership transition that the sector has faced in many decades. That's partly a demographic issue, but I would say it's also a succession planning issue, frankly. And that has affected where we are today from a leadership talent pool. So just from your perspective, succession planning is vital for any organization, but what do you see, how do you see it within the charitable context?
Yeah. One of the things that I was really pleased to see was that part of the performance review that the board set up for me was that one of the items was that I mentor another nonprofit leader. And that's fantastic. I think every charity organization out there should do that, should make part of the performance evaluation for their chief executive be that, because it then gives the chief executive license to go do that. It gives them license to a bit of time. And for those of you that have never mentored anyone, don't think that you need to be an expert. Don't think that you need to go read 10 books. Just jump in. There are some books that you could read that would be useful, but and I promise you will learn at least as much, if not more, than the person that you're mentoring. It is an awesome experience. So I've been doing that now for 8 years, both inside the organization, inside of MAF, but also external. And so I think that's important. That's important for the succession planning in the greater sense for the charity sector, because we need to be mentoring new leaders. Within MAF, there are 3 of us leaders that are going to be stepping off at about the same time. And so we've now, the executive leadership team, a year and a half ago began formulating a succession plan so that in a couple of years' time, when that comes to fruition, that we're ready. And we let the board know, and we've given the board updates on how that planning is going. And it has really caused us to think. So yes, it's hard to do, and it's hard to think about replacing yourself, but it's caused us, and EOS helps us with this. What does that structure need to look like in 5 years to achieve all of our 3-year goals and most of our 10-year goals? What is that? And when you do that, you're like, wow. So not only do we need to think about succession planning, we need to add a few boxes in there, because the person that's currently the chief operating officer is going to be way overloaded by the time we get there. So, it's been a good, healthy process, but it's a little weird thinking about the fact that you're not going to be around. And at the most recent board meeting, some of the vision stuff that I was talking about was beyond my tenure, and so that's strange.
Yeah, I bet it is. It must be a little maybe awkward on one hand, but maybe disappointing on another. Not being able to carry it through to realize the 10-year goals. Kind of.
So our 10-year goal is now a 9-year goal.
Yeah.
I would love to still be there in 9 years or 8 years when we achieve that goal. That would be exciting.
Yeah. That's good. Brad, thank you for this. This has been great just to get your perspective. I didn't set you up for this earlier, so I'm putting you on the spot a little bit when I ask you this. What is an element, just a perspective of hope or encouragement that you might give to other CEOs or senior leaders in the charitable space today?
Well, I mean, I can't remember a time in my career when the business climate has been more uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 9/11. 9/11 was a pretty odd time, pretty scary time. So to the Christian leader, the Christian nonprofit leader, I would say you need to lean into your faith. You need to remember that God is in control, and that none of what is happening is a surprise to God, and that you need to trust God. And so I find in times of uncertainty, both personally and professionally, when times are troubling, I lean into God more, and it's easy to not do that when things are good.
Yeah,
sure. Or easy to do that less. I would say to people, nonprofit leaders that are not of faith, that you need to lean into the people around you and make sure that you're relying on the resources and the leadership and the people group around you, and not to lose hope, because Canada is this amazing country. The cure to complaining about Canada is to travel to the countries that I travel.
Yeah.
That is the remedy. That is the cure. And we live in this amazing country, and God has a plan for Canada, and so we need to ride through this current storm, but it will be okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Just before we go, if somebody's interested, how can they learn more about MAF? That
is easy. In the day of technology, you simply go to maf.ca, and that will give a bit of our history. If you're interested in coming alongside of us as a volunteer, if you're interested in becoming a missionary, there's recruiting resources there. And of course, if you're interested in supporting us financially, there's a way to do that there as well. Yeah, so we'd encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been great, and always appreciate who you are and what you've done with MAF and the team that you've built there. So bless you in your continued work, and thank you for doing this for us today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for inviting me on.